everyone, and welcome to the Meet the Data Leader podcast. I'm Michal, and today we have with us Yuda Borochov. Yuda is a chief data officer that held senior data positions in the world's largest esports company, a rapid growth fintech, and even Fortune 100. Yuda serves in advisory board position in startup and VCs and come from an engineering background. It's great to have you here, Yuda.
Thanks, Michal. It's great to be here. Hi, everyone that's listening. I'm here to answer any questions.
Yeah. Let's start with the first question. How do you ensure your data initiatives align with your company's overall business goals, and what are the metrics you use to measure the success of the impact of your data team?
I think that's a great question. I think the nature of data teams in general is to be sometimes, maybe most of the time, to be 1 degree of separation away from the leading indicators or the KPIs, the top line metrics of a company. We can't say that we're trying to contribute to sales directly as a data team for the majority of the time. So I think the challenge that data teams face in general is identifying goals that are more relatable and more attainable for the data organization, both for analytics, science, and the data engineers. So how do I ensure that I'm aligned with the initiatives? It's more of breaking key KPIs into leading indicators that we can influence. Think about a hierarchical structure like an OKR structure, but think about it like OKMs, objectives and key metrics. Which metrics would influence these objectives the most?
Mhm.
And then figuring out how you break those down, each one of those into five, find a path to kind of break them into the smaller pieces of the company or the teams in the company, and then figure out which ones actually get closer to our initiatives, or we can get closer to them as a data team. Therefore, you might not be influencing the sales, how many deals are getting closed. But if you break that down, you might get to a marketing effort that you can really influence with a next best action model in data science, or an import or an onboarding of a bunch of data sources that you can model in a way that would really influence the research that the sales team does to identify candidates. That's kind of a structure that you want to build on a maybe more of an annual base, and then quarterly kind of align to how much you're influencing. And as we say in the business, what doesn't get measured doesn't get fixed.
All
You
right.
want to make sure that these are like the North Star KPIs for your data organization. So we don't get sidetracked by the amount of help desk tickets or people that are asking for an ad hoc kind of support. You want to hit those. And the I think the other benefit of that is that you get to share success. If you have good partners and you show them that your KPIs are their KPIs in a marketing team that's trying to get more leads, at the end of that quarter, when they celebrate the success and you celebrate similarly, it brings the teams even closer together. The success or impact of the data team, I think that second piece of the question, I think that's a challenge that data leaders are grappling with for a long time, especially in the new age of GenAI. There's always that, what have you done for me lately? Kind of a question. We get it. We've built a dashboard. We've implemented the data science model in production. But what value do I get now? And I think a lot of leaders have found their own kind of special sauce in order to portray their impact to the company. I think for me, it's like a combination of home runs versus points on the board. You want to make sure that every quarter you are able to articulate some of those KPIs that are really moving the business, the first part of the question. But in addition, you want to aggregate all of the other things that you're doing as an investment, as a strategy. If you are working to lower your AWS costs, or you've onboarded new data assets to the company, or you've developed a new uh, feature store set of features that really enables new types of thinking about product models. You want to make sure that you capture that in a way that kind of communicates to the company that you're getting. I always say there's only 3 levels to every business. You make money, you save money, or you mitigate risk. You want to make sure that you communicate the impact of your team, through those home runs or points on the board in a way that is really touching any one of those levels.
Okay, so next question. How do you ensure efficiency across your data stock and how do you measure it? What are the tools, strategies you're using to support this?
I think within the data team, making sure that you have, I think it ties a little bit to that structure, OKM structure that I spoke about before. There is one that is completely tied to the company's goals. And there is a second one that is really about mapping the performance of my team. And whatever you put in that structure, it becomes your North Star, like becomes your day-to-day hustle. And then you want to make sure you can, with that kind of a structure, you can put in your team at the top level more ambiguous or composite KPIs and say maturity score, for example. And then because of that hierarchical structure, you can give yourself that luxury at a top level KPI. And then under that, break that down into KPIs that are much more attainable and easy to consume. If you go down enough, you might go to how many tickets were opened on Jira. And our goal is to get to a lower number. A good KPI is not a metric. A good KPI has an objective goal tied to it. So if we want to say 10% less help desk tickets month over month, that becomes a KPI that eventually bubbles up to our maturity score going up. Same goes for lowering costs on cloud services, maintaining query performance, and even ENPS scores or CSAT scores from within the team about how well the engineering service is working or for the analysts, or how well the analysts are providing service for the company. So again, kind of a structure of, there's no, secret sauce here really, other than the fact that data teams should be using data to measure the data team's performance. If you build it the right way, it becomes a really nice tool for you to kind of have conversations that are factual within the team. Go like, hey, we're not doing a good job on this. We know this is where we're lacking. And it comes back to that previous point about communicating the success to the company. If I can say that quarter over quarter, we are improving in our maturity by changing these specific KPIs. We have lowered our budget on cloud services. We have closed more tickets than ever at a faster rate. And then then it communicates to the company that we really are moving up and we're diligent and proactive. And in addition, I think it gives us the freedom to figure out in what way we want to attack them. So it gives us the ability to say, this is a great opportunity for us to try to implement GenAI here. It's clear we're not trying to figure out something out of thin air. We say we want to lower the amount of open help desk tickets. Can we put some GenAI on that to lower that? It would contribute to the maturity score. It would lower the bandwidth that we need to attain in order to answer those things. So it gives a lot of focus as long as you measure things. No magic.
So my next question, and it's kind of like moving naturally after you talk a little bit about AI, and so how do you see AI tools influence data teams?
I think we need to move from this concept of peer review of like, hey, I'm asking the GenAI in front of me to do something, and I will monitor it as it's giving me an answer, and we will do back and forth, and then I will execute. Towards peer review. I have another member of my team. I treat this GenAI tool as another member of my team, as an agent. And he or she will go and do their stuff. And every 24 hours to 48 hours, I will be supervising them as a senior engineer or a senior analyst, looking at their outcomes, outputs, understanding what's going on, giving the flags, the supervised learning piece of it, of like, this is good, this is bad, I feel comfortable with this, let's run from this point on, let's run with this automatically, and accelerate this change that in a year or two, a large engineering team is not going to be, data engineering team is not going to be 20 people. A large data engineering team is going to be 5. and those 5 are going to be managing 5 to 10 agent engineers that they will be treating as junior engineers and supervise them and have some sort of a cycle with them throughout the week.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, is the vision where it would enable us to run a lot faster. And I think the for the people listening to this and maybe being concerned, there's a lot of behavioral science about this, about like, I don't want anybody to take my job or so on. I think the most comforting thought for everybody thinking about this is the first thing we want to give the robots is the things that we don't want to do. The tedious work, the finding out why this query is not performing well, or identifying that we should be running this pipeline every hour because everybody's consuming it once a week, and all of that stuff for the analysts themselves, identifying similarities in their 10,000 DBT models and trying to help them build the models that would really be useful for multiple use cases. Giving that to the agents and supervising them as a senior peer, I think is a really promising next step in the evolution of a data organization.
All right. So if you're requested to provide 1 or 2 tips for data engineers, what would you share?
Okay, so I'll try to maybe divide my answer to 2 pieces again. First one is like, it's not new tips, it's the good old-fashioned tips that I have for every data engineer. And then the second one might be a little bit towards this new up-and-coming evolution with GenAI and so on. So the first piece is really about being in control of how much you're proactive and deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest risk for data engineering teams, all data organizations in general, but specifically data engineering teams, is staying in a reactive service mindset. I'm here, I'm waiting for you to tell me what you need from me. Next Jira ticket that would open, I would be answering this. I will onboard a source when you ask me to onboard it, and I will fix the problem when it breaks. On the other hand, if you manage to carve out deliberately time from every sprint, hopefully, to carve it out from every sprint and make sure that you have some time for strategic initiatives and have a well-trimmed, well-prioritized strategic backlog
Mm-hmm.
of initiatives that you can estimate a really good ROI on, you would be ahead of the curve. The biggest risk, to quote Henry Ford, about if I asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. The biggest risk for a data engineer is nobody's going to ask you to build that next capability that really unlocks the company's value from data.
Mm-hmm.
Analysts are not going to knock on the door and go like, you know what we need? We need a really robust way of this disseminating this data across the company, and we need a GenAI driven tool to answer questions on top of our help desk material. You have to be the one researching and providing those ideas, prioritizing them together with the rest of the data organization and with the business, and staying ahead of it. If you do a little bit every sprint, that's the secret sauce for winning. If every sprint you carve out a little bit of time to move on those strategic initiatives, to proactively onboard new data sources, you will be just in control of how successful you are, much more in control. So that's the first tip. The second tip is really about it's about this new Gen AI and what I was saying about like this peer review versus peer review.
Mm-hmm.
Embrace that as soon as possible. I think engineers are much more likely to embrace technology change than other parts of the data org or just in general in the company. Be that engineer that's an early adopter and experiment. Maybe a word to the leaders is carve out time for that as well. Don't say figure that out and then leave it at that. Make sure that you have time for small hackathons, small business impact that you get from that, and collect those as points on the board of wins,
Mm-hmm.
and create a cycle of appreciation, of gratitude. I'm going like, hey guys, we've just we've experimented with these. We see the KPIs are getting better. Let's keep doing those innovation pockets. So we be ahead of the curve, because what you don't want to do is in a year or two from now figure out that somebody's demanding that you cut the team and you make it more efficient and you embrace GenAI. You want to do it every sprint from now until then.
What do you think is I don't know, you can also divide it to two if you want, but what is the biggest challenge data leaders are facing?
I'll give two, one big, one that accompanies it. The biggest challenge is that data leaders have to prove their value on a regular basis. If you don't have the right environment around you, that becomes 80% of what you do. It becomes the mission of demonstrating the value that you bring. And I think, like I said, there is no one clear way, standardized way to do this. It depends on the audience. You have to build the right KPIs for the company that you're in and the leaders that you're working with. And that becomes a challenge. At some points, it becomes a big piece of your job. I think that's a challenge for all the leaders. That's what I'm hearing from everybody is like, what do you do? What's your secret sauce? How do you tell everybody what you're doing in a way that doesn't seem defensive, doesn't overbear others, and really connect to everybody else's mission? The second piece of this is, I think, the information overload. I think the pace of innovation has rapidly increased in the last, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years, and especially in the last couple of years. And I think, like, if you look back 15 years ago, embracing a new, innovating milestone in the data landscape. Let's take Hadoop as an example. You had time between innovations to figure out what is this technology, how does it fit in the vision, how do I put that within my strategy and my org. And in the last, let's say, 5 years, the pace of innovation has picked up even more. And with GenAI, we could be talking to vendors, and a month later, the pitch that they gave us would change because that capability is now part of a cloud service that is free, part of their GenAI. I think that staying ahead of our field as data leaders and knowing about every new change and how does it fit, or is it just a fad and like it's going to go away in a month or two, is another piece of the challenge.
Thank you, Yuda, for being here today and sharing with us your thoughts and knowledge and challenges that those data leaders are facing. Super appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so just before we kind of like finishing here, I just wanted to kind of like ask you, what have you been doing to these days? What are you up to?
Thanks for asking. I've been transitioning more and more towards advisory roles, both in board and generally to scale ups and VCs. And in general, consulting a little bit more in more fractional CDO position, trying to make a big impact in a short period of time. And mentorship opportunities, just trying to be of service to my colleagues and friends in the data industry.
And if I want to reach out, how do we do this?
I mean, you can always reach out to me through LinkedIn. I'm always available. Anybody that wants to follow up on any question here or give me their peace of mind about my opinion.
Perfect. Perfect. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yuda. Bye, everyone.